Street Missionary Baptist Church. We pray that when you enter the parking lot and then you entered into our lobby, that you will always experience an excellent hospitality, warm welcome. Thank you all for practicing the CDC guidelines. We're not so rigid that if you decide that you will not wear the mask, we're not going to put you out, okay? But we thank you for following the CDC guidelines. We really do appreciate that. But I want to welcome you, and I also want to say thank you to Ms. Amin for allowing us to host this wonderful conference. And so we're a community church, we're outward focused, and so we want you to know whatever we can do here, we're welcome and we're willing to do that. The other thing we want you to know is that if by chance you have to pay dues, that means if you have to go to the restroom, it's going to be to my left, your right, some of your left, so you can go through these right down the hallway, make an immediate left, and then you will find the restrooms, okay? We want to, again, welcome you. Thank you for being here. And there's great information that you will receive today. God bless you. God keep you. Ms. Elamine is an advocate. She's not only an advocate, she is an activist. And so she's been here 12 years in our community. She has made a tremendous impact. So she's someone that'll tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, but also she has a heart for people. And so with that, I want to introduce Ms. Teresa Elamine.
Thank you, Pastor. The 4th Street Baptist Church, for those of you from Atlanta here today, we call the 4th Street Baptist Church our Ebenezer. And so if you're from Atlanta, you know what that means. So to be able to have our 2nd annual Fannie Lou Hamer Branch Human Rights Conference here at 4th Street, it's an honor. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which was founded in 1915. So it's one of the few 100-year-old organizations in the United States. The NAACP being the oldest, founded in 1909. The Southern Anti-Racism Network, a lot younger, founded in 1998 in Durham, North Carolina, is the fiscal sponsor for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch and the projects that Pastor Place know that we do here in the Columbus community that we did for 12 years in North Carolina. Then I moved here and we've been doing it 12 years in Columbus. So the purpose of our event today is to lift up the multi-faith initiative for ending mass incarceration. So you'll be hearing about that a lot. The badge I'm wearing comes from the 2019 Multi-Faith Initiative Ending Mass Incarceration Conference, which was held in Atlanta at Ebenezer. And those of us who paid a very small amount to go to that 3-day conference received these bags, which has a lot of important materials that we'll be talking about later. I was the only person from Columbus at that conference in 2019. So we'll be hearing about the upcoming conference early next year. But before we eat lunch, I know that some of you came here about the expungement services. That we're blessed to have the support of our solicitor, Suzanne Goddard, who is here. Wave your hand, Suzanne, and the assistant district attorney, Nicholas Hood, who's helping with the felony issues, and our supervising attorney, Paige Jan, from the Georgia Justice Project. I cannot believe the resources that the Georgia Justice Project has put into this effort. Our first time doing it in Columbus, and they're the experts. So I'm going to turn it over to Paige Jan. And Paige, we have about 10 minutes for this portion because the food has been ready for a while, and we do want to have lunch before we do the rest of the program. So thank you, Paige. It's on you. Oh, there you are. Is there a microphone down there?
I can sit right here.
Thank you, Paige.
You can hear me loud over there. Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. We are happy to be here. As Ms. Elamine mentioned, my name is Paige. I am one of the supervising attorneys at the Georgia Justice Project. We are a team, and so I am here with a small but mighty team. I'll point you all to if you want to wave as well. So Cooper Ulrich is one of our staff attorneys. He's going to be helping consult with folks who may have questions about their record. Also in the back, if they can hear me, we've got Mia, one of our stellar legal interns that is just sticking with us, and we won't let her go. And then we've got Dominique Madison, who is our intake supervisor. So we are going to be here mingling around. All of us are pretty much equipped to answer most of the questions that you have, so please feel free to grab one of us. But we are so happy to be here. Just to tell you a little bit about GJP, to let you know what kind of resources are in the back, and then we'll jump right into what this event can hopefully help with, and then what can be done. So we have a lot of resources available, because GJP is a nonprofit that is located in Atlanta. We drove here from the Old Fourth Ward. We are a legal nonprofit, but we do a lot of different work. So we have defense services that we offer. We do direct representation of folks. Today we're doing record clearing, and that's what we are equipped to do, but we also have a defense team. They take cases that are pending out of DeKalb and Fulton. In addition to our direct representation, we also have a policy team. Our clients inform the work that we do, so we are showing up at the Capitol every year to try to make the law just a little bit better for folks who have any interaction with the legal system. The last thing we do is education and outreach, so that's just spreading the word about new laws or areas that need to be improved, and just kind of bridging the gap between access to certain services. So that is a little bit about us. Just to talk about what this event is hopefully going to accomplish for the folks that are here today. We are going to be looking at history that was resolved out of Muskogee Superior Court or State Court. That is the area of focus here. As we'll talk about in a little bit, record clearing has to be pursued and sometimes filed in the original court where the case occurred. So we are going to be screening files here today where it specifically says Muskogee Superior or Muskogee State Court. Also, we are able to meet with individuals who have not only history out of Muskogee Superior Court and State Court, but also if you have your GCIC with you. So that's kind of shorthand for a criminal history report, basically a background, a record. Hopefully, if you're here and you're wanting some assistance, that you're able to get that from an arresting agency. If not, we'll try to give you as much information and answer questions as generally as we can. So if you're here today and you've got a copy of that report, we are going to meet with you, answer any questions that you have, and potentially fill out some materials to get some of those records cleared, or at least submitted to either the DA or the solicitor's office. So hopefully that's good news for those of you in attendance. So I do want to take a second just to see if either Ms. Goddard or Mr. Hyde, if you wanted to say anything.
Okay, happy to. Yeah.
Before I go into more detail about expungement.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I'll go ahead and take anything for the Chattahoochee Judicial Circuit. That'll be Chattahoochee, Harris, Marion, Muskogee, Taylor, Talbot counties. So if there are cases involving those, I can accept those on behalf of my office as well.
Hey, I am Suzanne Goddard. I'm Solicitor General. And my office prosecutes misdemeanors. So, oh, sorry. So that's why I'm here today. And I do receive a lot of requests, for restrictions, and the laws have changed. I'm trying to keep up with them, but if I can be of any help, and I'm very happy to be here. And I do have some cards if anybody would like one. So we'll be talking later, I guess. But thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes to do a crash course of record clearing in Georgia. Hopefully someone helps keep me honest with time. I don't want to go over. But just to help set expectations for what can be done. I find that sometimes is helpful. So in Georgia, we don't have what a lot of folks commonly know or hear about as expungement. I might say the word just because it's what we're used to hearing. But expungement really refers to a process where records are destroyed. And that just isn't the case in Georgia, unfortunately. Our law instead allows records to be limited from view for certain purposes. So when we're talking about expungement here, we are trying to limit its accessibility to people or entities that really matter and affect people's lives, right? So getting a job and we're having a background check be run, applying for housing, different things like that, maybe obtaining an occupational license. So the good news is that although criminal history has been restricted and sealed, that is our version of expungement. It's never destroyed. It is always still available to law enforcement. But for some of those more general purposes for employment and housing, there is relief. So in addition to that kind of that nuance with our law, what really matters and what when you meet with us, you'll see what we're focusing on. We're looking at someone's GCIC report. We're really focusing on what was the outcome in the case, right? What was the final decision? Was it a conviction or something else? Our law is very clear about those two categories of information, and there are different eligibility rules. So what we will do, we'll take a look at your record with you, hear what's been going on, how the record might be a barrier for you, and then be able to advise you about any potential remedies. That said, I do want to take just one small moment to talk about some things that sometimes are outside of this process, just to kind of help with expectations too. If we're talking about out-of-state history, that's something that this event can assist with. We are only able to look at arrests that occurred in Georgia. Also cannot look at federal history. It has to be a state case. And this type of event would not be able to assist with the pending case, right? These are cases that are typically closed. We look at how was it closed? Was it a dismissal or a conviction or something else? And then we're going to be able to advise you on what might be the path forward or what is the eligibility for that disposition. All right, that is a very rough overview. What I will say is we have an FAQ. I'm going to hold it up here that I would encourage everyone to grab, because what it does is it lays out all of the remedies that are available, right? If you're asking yourself, I have a felony conviction, what do I do? Misdemeanor, what do I do? Dead docket, what do I do? This form, as well as our consultations, would answer those questions for you.
Well, thank you, Paige. So if we could get a sense of how many people actually came today with their records, expecting to get them expunged. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay, so that gives you a sense of how many of us are ready. And lucky me, Ms. Goddard was the person who dropped my charges. But I was surprised because I thought dropping the charges meant it was all gone away. And when I went to the police department and asked for my records, here they are, my mugshot and everything. So you really do, if you've ever been arrested, you really do want to check because your records could still be there. And this happened in February of 2013 for me. And the records are still there. And it's so easy. When you go to the Columbus Police Department, Sam, he's the go-to guy behind the glass window. And you just say, I want to get my background records for expungement. You pay the $20 and within 5 minutes, bam. So that's why and I talked to him a couple of days ago, and I said, because I was a little confused because he gave me another sheet of paper and I forgot to bring it, that was explaining something different. But for this purpose, if you were arrested in Columbus, Muscogee County, you can go to the Columbus Police Department no matter when it happened, and they can give you your records. And he said all the way back to when you were 17 if it happened, that far back. So they'll give you all your records from that far back for the $20 fee. So I just want to make sure that anybody who came here who don't have their records yet, you want to go there as soon as you can to get them. Because this is just the first of hopefully a series of events that we will partner with the Georgia Justice Project on. Because we'll have a panel. Good afternoon, everyone. How was the lunch?
Great.
I enjoyed it. I didn't get a chance to eat enough, so let's get this show on the road so I can get back to my plate. What we're doing this afternoon is a panel discussion to talk about information you need to know in the movement for ending mass incarceration. We have people here who have been involved for a very long time, and people of faith in the multi-faith initiative for ending mass incarceration, which is why it's so important for us to be here at 4th Street Missionary Baptist Church, because you will hear about the commitment to ending mass incarceration and supporting returning citizens. First, we're going to hear from Nicole Weiss, and I've apologized to her for misspelling her name. So on the program, you see her last name spelled as Weisen, but it's Wien. Nicole Weiss. And Nicole is the Georgia coordinator for the National Multi-Faith Initiative for Ending Mass Incarceration, based at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. So she's going to talk to us for 7 minutes about her role. And I forgot to ask you at lunch, Shante, but I need you to be the timekeeper.
Okay.
So when people have been speaking for 5 minutes, give them the 2-minute warning, because we've asked each of the speakers to speak for 7 minutes, so we'll have time for open discussion. So I will pass the mic to, oh, you have that mic?
Yeah.
Oh, so.
Keep your mic. Keep your mic.
Keep going.
She keep her mic.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll follow the tech person, but my plan was to pass the mic so that people could speak.
We have another one.
Okie dokie. So Nicole, it's on you to explain what you're doing in Georgia for the multi-faith initiative.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Wiesen, and thank you, Ms. Alameen, for inviting me here, as well as Pastor Flakes. I really do appreciate it. June 19th, 2020, I was released from prison and was formally reintegrated back into society. At that time, I was trying to figure out where I was, what I was doing, what can I do, how can I give back, because one of the things that I did was did a lot of good trouble while I was in prison. I was able to write and advocate for the women there to make sure that they got what they needed while they were dealing their time. Through that good trouble that I created, I came about and around the National Incarceration Association, who then introduced me to Reverend Vaughn and the Multi-Faith Initiative, who then decided, no, we need Nicole on board, not only because she's able to bring her own extensive network, but because I was formerly incarcerated as well. And we all know that it's best when you're helping previously incarcerated people when you have been incarcerated yourself, because you understand the challenges and the barriers and have firsthand knowledge to be empathetic and sympathetic at the same time. So being charged as the Georgia coordinator for the Multi-Faith Initiative, it is my job to go into the largest counties in Georgia and bring together the faith communities and weave them to find the capacity in what they're doing to help returning individuals and their families. So that is what I have been charged to do. I've now started just in the Atlanta area and starting to branch out and get to know the various other larger cities such as Columbus and Augusta and Savannah. So that is where I'm at now. But the 3 pillars of the Multi-Faith Initiative are congregational engagement, where we engage each faith community to see what that capacity is so that they can help each individual and family. We have narrative change, where we go in and teach the new verbiage and the new language that is acceptable for those individuals who are coming home, because we don't want to continue to walk around with a scarlet letter on our back. Yes, we committed a crime, we did do our time, but at the same time we are human and we are home, and we don't want to be labeled. And the third piece of that is political and education piece of public policy. We actually work very close with the Georgia Justice Project in helping educate the faith communities of what the new policies are, so that we can then engage the communities to let them know this is what's going on, this is how you need to pull, this is how we work forward to move and to change the narrative so that we can end mass incarceration for, all intents and purposes. So that's basically what I do. Again, thank you for having me here. I do appreciate it.
Well, you passed it.
Well, you all let me in. I am very thankful that we have an opportunity to be a part of this effort in ending mass incarceration in various locations, particularly here in Columbus, Georgia. One of the things that our church is very, very much involved in, and that is the reentry. Over 14 years ago or more, we entered into an initiative with, many of you know, Mr. Donald. Mr. Donald was actually over the state correction before moving to Partners in Parole. He was a former officer in the military, and so Mr. Mack came on. I want Mr. Mack to raise his hand. This is Mr. Richard Mack. He was on board at the inception, where we actually entered into partnership with training persons to go into the prison system to begin to assess for resources that those persons who would be returning out of the prison and returning back into particularly the zip code, which we found out many of them would be returning back into zip code 31901. And so we had established a pretty extensive program, case management. We partnered with the state, trained others to go into the prison system to assess what they needed when they were coming out. We were basically collaborating with many of the organizations here in Columbus. But then things sometimes get a little bogged down in terms of bureaucracy. But also what happens, we was partnered with Columbus State. Dr. Downs, Professor Downs was a part of that process as well. But there was also a lot of transitioning going on. The state was moving to Forsyth. And so there's just a number of things that was happening in terms of changes. We decided we would maintain the initiative in terms of reentry. Mr. Mack, along with others, was very, very much involved. We've got Mr. Campbell on, Mr. Vincent Campbell. Mr. Vincent Campbell was supervisor of parole, is that right? Probation. Mr. Mack has about how many years, Mr. Campbell? 13. 32 years, Mr. Mack.
13.
And 13 years with Mr. Campbell. And so they actually lead our reentry here at the church. We have a partnership with Caring for Others, which is a nonprofit organization in Atlanta, where they provide brand new clothes, brand new shoes, whatever the case may be. And so we invite not only parole or those returned citizens coming out, but also our community to get whatever they need, but also if they need transportation. So we would have access to resources if they need transportation. So we've been in the business of returned citizens for a long time. And when I say business, the business of providing resources to them so that they can make a smooth transition. We want them to believe that after they pay whatever the restitution or whatever has been assigned to them as from the judicial system, once they've completed that, we want them to be re-entered back into the community with dignity, with respect, become very productive citizens. But also we welcome them to our church. We are a station of hope. Once that initiative was put forward, we became a station of hope. The training was held here. We have the Station of Hope seal still on our window. So we welcome. Let me give you a real-time example. Young man just got out of prison this morning. Came to this church. Walked in. Said, I need. It's not a question. He's homeless. We're going to put him up. I called a good friend of mine who basically have established housing. His name is Neil Richardson. And so I talked to him this morning to make sure that he will have at least Monday an opportunity to have some lodging. But also he's going to work today here. So it's not just about the talk, it's about the walk. To let persons know that when they're in need, that they can come to a place like this. No judgment. And so one of the things that we want them to know, those returned citizens, that God loves them too. He has not given up on them. And we believe in grace and mercy. I'm doing a series of sermons this whole month on grace. And my prayer is that those who will hear it, not only extend it, but also those will know that they can receive it. So that's what we do. We have House of Hope on the street every third Saturday, where people just walk up and just go shopping. We close off the front street. 5th Street is in front of us. And they can just walk up and get clothes. They can walk up and get food. Their kids can come and get toys. And so that's what we're about. It's not just about the four walls. It's about looking outward and continuing to build relationships with the least, the less, and the lost. So thank you all so very much for being here. And you all are welcome too.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Walisha Wilson. I am a native of Columbus. I'm also formerly incarcerated. I now reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I was released from prison in 2010, and I am, like I said, a Columbus native. While I was here, I started a nonprofit organization, New Life Second Chance Outreach, where we connect people who are returning home from prison with employers who we have as partners who call us. They know the folks that we work with have records, and they say they have positions, and we share those resources with them. Landlords who have housing who are willing to rent to them. We share events like these. Anything that will support and help those that we serve throughout the state of Georgia, that is what we do. Whether it's entrepreneurship, financial wellness, helping them get jobs, job readiness, money management, if it can help them, that's what we do. But I'm here on behalf of the Multi-Faith Initiative in Mass Incarceration. I'm one of the co-chairs for the 2023 conference that we'll be having January 11th through the 13th at Ebenezer and the Temple. I am a member of Ebenezer, where the Pastor Raphael Warnock resides. And so we would like to invite you all to come out to that conference. It is a 2-day conference in Atlanta at Ebenezer, and one day it will be at the Temple with our partners over there, where it will be 2 days of focusing on the faith community's role in reentry. Oftentimes when people release home from prison, shockingly enough, a lot of people are denied access to worship. I myself have been put out of 3 churches because I had a felony conviction. It wasn't because I did anything wrong in the church. I simply stood up and said I had a felony and was asked to not come back. And so I have been on a quest over the last several years to speak on this experience with how critical it is for the faith community to be involved with people returning home from prison. Part of that is to end stigmas in calling us inmates, convicts, felons, prisoners. That is not who we are. We are human, we are people, we are citizens. And that is where you hear the terms returning citizens come in at. And so through my advocacy, I am an advocate. Although I work at the Southern Center for Human Rights during the day, I am an activist and organizer on a lot of issues that impact folks who are returning home and also people who are currently incarcerated. But most of my focus is when we get home. A lot of the barriers were placed in place with that, and I speak on those issues. And one of those issues is the relationship that we have with people of faith, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, with us being denied access to worship with people. And some of the things, I truly believe that sometimes it's just a matter of you being supported by people of faith. Could be the difference between you giving up and saying, I'm just gonna go back to doing what everybody expects me to do. And to me, a place of faith, whether it's the Jewish faith or whatever faith it is, that place of worship is where the spiritually sick are supposed to go. And when you're turning away people simply because you're misinformed or you're sticking to stigmas, it causes more harm than good. I do believe churches should not be just in the walls where you're just preaching about stuff. I do believe that you should be in the kingdom and living what you're doing. Or to say you have churches say, oh, we got a prison ministry, but none of the people you've been preaching to for 20 years in jail, prison, you've actually invited to come to your church to be members in your church. Or those kind of things. So it's different than saying what you're doing and just show what you're doing, but what are you really doing to welcome folks in so that they're able to have their souls saved so that they can be redeemed and, reach salvation like everybody else. And so one of the key things I talk to people about is when you have prison ministries and things like that, the people leading those prison ministries should be formerly incarcerated people. And so these are just some of the things I also talk to folks about and preach about. But of course, when you all get an opportunity, Nicole, can you shout out the website real quick? Because I keep forgetting. It's multifaith.
EMI.com for the
Multifaithemi.com. And if you would just go to the top, you can register there. You can also, I think it's less than $160 to register. You can also see the schedule. I will actually be facilitating a workshop with my good friend, Reverend Haroldine Doc Truyer of Healing Communities USA, who started the Stations of Hope program. And we will be talking about how to be a welcoming community for all. And when we say all, that means all. We've heard of people who are unsheltered and homeless being kicked out. We've heard of churches throughout Georgia who are running background checks, asking people to leave church. People who are on the sex offender registry who are denied access to coming into churches. People who are LGBTQ are being kicked out of churches. And so we will be talking about what does it really mean to be a place of worship and a place that welcomes all. Because when we all get to where we're going, there's not going to be any separation. And so that is what me and Doc will be teaching on. But there are going to be a lot of great workshops throughout the day, from ending mass incarceration, how to affect your policies. It's going to be a lot of stuff, juvenile justice. Right now, currently in Georgia, we're working on trying to raise the age. So it's going to be 2 great workshops days. I think the first night we're going to open up with a concert with Calling All Crows. Thursday night, Calling All Crows, and Pastor Warnock is going to speak, and we have a Reverend Dr. Otis Moss. So we're going to have a great lineup of folks that's going to be there, and if you all could come, so Teresa won't be the only one from Columbus coming up again this year. I think it would be a great opportunity for you all to come, and hopefully you'll be there to engage. And like I said, I'm one of the co-chairs, and I'm sure you'll see me around somewhere. And if you hadn't heard my name throughout here, this and that, I come back and forth to Columbus every now and then. So I'll make it a point to really start getting with Reverend Place and see how we can work together with doing some of the work that we're doing as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Felicia. Let me just first say, you all know who I am. I'm Paige. I'm supervising attorney with the Georgia Justice Project with the Records Program. I just want to say it's a real honor to be on this panel and just listening to you all speak and the work that you're doing and just the message. It's incredibly powerful. So I recognize my real privilege of being able to be here today and to be here with the team and just trying to help people. So I spoke a little bit earlier today about the work that we do, the on-the-ground work, but I do want to take a second step back and talk about what is our overarching mission. We have 2 of them. One is to reduce the number of individuals in Georgia who are under correctional control, right? So we're talking about folks who are incarcerated. Maybe they're under probation supervision, some type of post-case release. Also, we're trying to reduce the barriers to reentry. And that really intersects with what we're talking about today, right? So when someone has a touch with the legal system, what are all the ways in which there's a ripple effect on every part in their life? So we are very much focused on trying to minimize as much as we can with the work that we do, the negative impacts that flow from any interaction with the legal system. So, we are all aware of the way our criminal justice system operates, and the numbers in Georgia are astounding. We all know this, right? There are well over 40% of Georgians who have an arrest record. And that number is astounding. That means it is our neighbors, it is our family members, it is my brother, right? We all know someone. And so I mention that to say it is the reality, right? And so when we have a system that has all of these consequences that flow from that, at a certain level, we need to look at ourselves and ask why we're doing this, right? Do we want everyone to be productive? And so this is what we really try to do through our records program. We try to help remove those barriers by getting folks back to work, getting them back to a professional license that they're pursuing, and just hearing the stories about being denied entrance to a church. I mean, there are countless numbers of collateral consequences, but
44,000 vehicles.
yes, thank you, perfect. But I hadn't even thought of that one, and just it's never ending. So the work that we do is a small part of that, but it is specific to an arrest record and how it does hold folks back. So I did want to talk about, that number of 40%. How does that happen? Why is that such a high number? How is it so commonplace, right? And the reason is in Georgia, it does vary by state, but here in Georgia, if someone is arrested, that's what starts the entry on someone's record, right? It does not matter what happened to the case necessarily. It could have been dismissed. There is still an entry on someone's Georgia official criminal history report. And for the most part, some type of an affirmative action has to be done. Some step has to be taken to try to restrict and seal, or what we know as expungement, to do something with it, to limit it from view. And a lot of folks don't know that. I didn't know that until I started actually working at the Georgia Justice Project. So we just want to get the information out that something has to happen in order to restrict and seal something from someone's record. But the good news is that there is some relief, right? There is a process. And our process in Georgia is not true expungement. I talked about this a little bit before. We don't destroy records, but we do limit who can see it, and it's a two-step process. We limit who can see it on someone's official record, their GCIC report, and then we try to limit the records that are available at a courthouse. So we do that through a separate process called sealing. That part is extra important. Reason being is a lot of employers and housing providers, those are the records that they're pulling. This might be an experience that you've already gone through, right? You've applied for a job, they have asked your permission to pull a checker background check, and it shows up, right? So there are hundreds, probably thousands of companies that do this. This is a business. But thankfully, there's a process where sealing for a certain eligible history can occur so that they can't report it. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. We're going to be looking at things on someone's criminal history report. We are going to be focusing in on what was the outcome to see if it's eligible. Most non-convictions, I'm going to do real broad strokes here, but just to give you an idea of what can be done in Georgia, sometimes it's helpful with expectation setting. In Georgia, thank you, most non-convictions can be restricted and sealed. There are some exceptions, and usually it's a little bit easier to kind of talk through those scenarios, but generally speaking, a dismissed case, something that was maybe not presented to the grand jury, other types of non-conviction dispositions can typically be restricted. And if something's been restricted, then you are able to request sealing, which is discretionary, but it is a potential option. Convictions, I do want to talk about that because there's a recent expansion. In Georgia now, folks can restrict and seal 2 misdemeanor convictions from their record. There are certain eligibility, and so we're here and we've got materials back there, but we'll pre-screen because not all offenses are eligible, but if it is, and then there's some other criteria in terms of when it occurred and things like that we can talk you through, but now folks can take away 2 misdemeanors from their record, which is great. Also for felonies, if you have received a pardon and it's a general pardon, certain felonies that have been pardoned can also be restricted and sealed. So that is that's somewhat new too, but that is a much bigger expansion than what we had before. So there are a few other options, but they're really kind of specific to what we might see. But we'd be happy to talk to everyone here about what we see and fill out what we can for Ms. Gogi or the Chattahoochee Judicial Circuit.
Well, thank you, panelists. Hearing that 40% number is shocking. It's absolutely shocking. I had no idea it was that high. But then when I look at this panel, 3 of us women up here have been arrested. And so I'm looking to get my 2 misdemeanors expunged. Because being arrested and being in jail, I was shocked at the people who were coming in. When I found out that my 2 misdemeanors was going to be $750 to bail me out, well, lucky I wasn't broke, so I just went to the ATM, got the money, and got out of jail. I was there less than 2 hours, but it gave me a chance to see young people being brought in for criminal trespass for passing out palm cards at tax time. You don't arrest people for that. It's ridiculous. People who have been drugged out of their beds naked with a blanket around them and brought into the jail, young black men. It was appalling. Homeless people, obviously mentally ill, no business being arrested. And the people running the jail, because I was like I was in a movement and I was just talking and everything. And the people running the jail were so nice to me. They just let me show up and show out. I said, this is outrageous. They said, Miss Elamine, we just process them. We don't have anything to do with who they bring in and why. I said, we all doing a great job with the processing thing. But every time I saw them cops bring in and somebody else in the way they would treat them, I said, this is outrageous. So the reason we're here today on the question of ending mass incarceration is to make sure people are not being arrested at the rate they're being arrested, because the state has a purpose in doing that. Part of what people in my movement say is in the police state. So we want to stop people getting arrested, because Georgia is one of a few states that allows penal slavery, which is something we need to be real clear about. Muskogee County is the largest work camp of the 25 work camps in Georgia that turn out slaves every day. The Columbus Consolidated Government turns out approximately 400 slaves every day. You see them everywhere. You see the prison detail trucks riding around the city, no air conditioning. They're like slave ships. All those people in those trucks, they pick up the garbage, they do the recycling, they work at the government center, cleaning the building, including the mayor's office. There is nowhere in the Columbus Consolidated Government where you don't see prison labor. When I went to the DMV when I first moved here to get my driver's license, and somebody came over to me in trustee, obvious prison clothes, asking me for my papers, and I was like, what? And the people at the DMV said, he works here. And I was like, what? At the DMV. There is nowhere in the Columbus Consolidated Government you can go and you don't see prison labor. I'll be speaking at City Council on Tuesday, and part of one of the things I've been talking about, and I'll never forget the first time I brought it up in 2011 at the Cunningham Center, and I said to the mayor, Teresa Tomlinson at the time, I said, she was talking about the haves and the have-nots. I said, the thing that bothers me most is seeing prison slave labor in this town. And everybody in the room, including you, Pastor Place, came up to me and said, you're right. And I was like, how long have you lived here? And people were going, all my life. I said, how can you live here all your life and allow prison slave labor like this? We gotta end it. But at any rate, the mayor at the time said, we save money doing that. And so she said, we save $7 million or something. I asked for a meeting with her and the city manager, and he said, Madam Mayor, we saved $19 million. Those are jobs. People used to work on those jobs, picking up garbage. They eliminated work for people to use prison slave labor. So part of ending mass incarceration is removing the state's interest in prison slavery. So I'm saying that to say Governor Deal came to the conclusion years ago when he was governor. Mass incarceration is not sustainable. I heard him say it out of his own mouth. He said, we are paying more to house prisoners than we are to educate our children. We need to end this. It's not, he was a fiscal conservative. And he said, we've been spending this money in the wrong place. So in 2015, Governor Deal signed an executive order to ban the box. So when you go for a job with the state, they don't ask you about your arrest record. They don't. Columbus instituted the same law, ban the box. The expungement services is a partner to the ban the box. Because if they don't ask you that question initially, when you do, because they're going to check your records, trust me. But if they check your records and they don't see anything as an employer, and you're not applying for law enforcement job, if you're applying for a law enforcement job, expungement does not hide you. So I'm hoping that we can get real clear about what employers get to see once your record is expunged. So we're trying to institute ban the box in the private sector. We're saying to the Chamber of Commerce to tell all your company members, do not ask that question. FLH, don't ask that question. McDonald's, don't ask that question, so that people can get a job. Because the three things Governor Deal says that's really important. You got to have access to housing once you come out, reentry. You got to have a diploma. He said none of that GED stuff. So Governor Deal instituted high school diplomas in prisons when he was governor, so people could actually get a real high school diploma before they left prison in Georgia under Governor Deal. You need housing, you need a diploma, and a job. And a job. Those are the three things you really got to have. So working with public housing so that they stop banning people who have felonies. So I'm giving that little message to kick off our discussion, because the good news is in Columbus, thanks to Walisha and New Life Second Chance, Walisha informed us of the companies that don't hire you if you got a record. Because there are a lot of companies that will hire you. But I know Kentucky Fried Chicken got a national bar against hiring anybody with a record. So, you know, it's kind of like we said in the civil rights movement, we don't shop where we can't work. So these are the kinds of things that we have to build the infrastructure around. Neil Richardson with the jail ministry, very important. And Pastor Flakes just referenced it this morning. I want to acknowledge my sister, chair of the board of the Urban League. They have a very serious program, Sister Danita Gibson-Lloyd from the Urban League. So we know we can count on the Urban League. Tracy Mosley is on the mayor's reentry commission, and he's on the employment committee of that. So we have plenty in Columbus that we need to know is here so we can start working together. So let's open it up for questions and comments from the audience here. Anyone who would like to ask a question of any of the panelists, because I do want to say a little bit more about the Ending Mass Incarceration, Let My People Go conference. This is a conference I attended in 2019. This is one of the booklets that they gave us. The reason we're doing this expungement event is because this is a booklet I got when I was there in 2019, and it shows you how to do an expungement event. And thanks to Paige, and I've shared this booklet with Pastor Flakes and lots of other pastors. This room should have been full of people based on the multi-faith initiative support, but we haven't quite gotten it off the ground here in Columbus. Because if we had, with all the hundreds of churches here in Columbus, we should have been able to get 50 or 60 people here. So that's what we're up against. How do we get the community working together, particularly the faith community. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question, but this is a microphone that you all need to speak into so that we can capture it and those that are streaming, that are watching us streaming this live can hear you. So who's got the first question for us out here or comment in the audience?
My sister always steps up to help. Oh, she has told my daughter, she calls me Mama T, and I love her so much.
So my question or comment would be more towards Paige, I'm thinking, but anyone can answer it. It's twofold. One, with looking at the number of people who are coming out of incarceration, is there going to be anything done about the Census Bureau? Because the inmates in jail and prison are counted inside of the Census Bureau, and they're also moved around during election time so that they can be counted. But they're not able to vote. And oftentimes when they're released from incarceration, they're still unable to vote if they're on papers. So is there anything being done about that? And the second part is what happens to the 900 people on average that are pardoned out of prison each year, and when they don't have anywhere to live for the first 5 years, if they can't find a place to live, they have to return as citizens to the prisons. So that's my two questions.
Well, I might need to bring Alicia in to answer this. I mean, I do want to talk about voting in a very separate way, just not to miss something, but do you?
You want me to hit the first part?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. And this is where I'm proud of the journey that I've had, because when I came out of prison, nobody saw me as an expert. So when I have a lawyer pass the mic to me as an expert, it's humbling. But this is actually something that formerly incarcerated people here in Georgia are working on. Part of it is miseducation. A lot of people don't know that when you're in prison, you're in jail. This is if you really notice and pay attention. Everything is incentivized. Mass incarceration itself is incentivized. Whether it's the Muskogee County Jail getting $75 a day to put people in that jail, to the state of Georgia getting $25,000 a year to fill those state prison beds, to saving $19 million where you could be paying somebody for those jobs and you'd rather use slaves. Everything is incentivized. So if you would notice and pay attention when you go to a lot of these small towns, they got a lot of speed traps. That's how they run the revenue for their city, by locking people up. So you can be like, oh, I can go 120 going down 75, but I better slow down once I hit Tauber, Georgia. Those are the type places that they get their money from doing that. And if you will notice, whether it's Reedsville prison, all these prisons are in these small backwood towns. But since the prison has been there, they've got new parks, they've got new parking lots, they've built new schools, because what they're doing is people who are in prison are counted in the census, and a lot of people don't know that. So when it says in Columbus, Georgia has 250,000 people, technically Columbus, Georgia may have 200,000 people, but because 50,000 people are out at that prison out on Chautauqua Road, they're counted in our census. So when Columbus says we need more money for handicapped parking spaces, we need more parking wrecks, we got 250,000 people that need this, a lot of times that's really kind of like a lot. That's not a true hood. Because those people who may be from Fulton County, Albany, wherever they're from, they're little small towns, Brunswick, they need the money that can be coming from those people. So basically, while I'm sitting in prison and my county is going without, I am benefiting your county by being counted in a census. And so there are formerly incarcerated people right now with Imam Atlanta, which is a Muslim Action Network group in Atlanta who's working on the no taxation without representation. I don't know if that's in the Constitution or not, but we shouldn't be taxed if we have no representation. We're counted in census, but yet when we get out, we can't vote. When we're in prison, we're required to still pay student loans. We're still obligated to pay taxes that we may owe to the IRS. But when we get out, we got to still pay child support while we're incarcerated, while we're working for free, but we cannot vote. And so one of the things that they have been talking about is either you need to let us vote or you need to not. We should not have to pay taxes. And this is one of the issues that if you'll notice that during political time, like you said, they'll wonder why all of a sudden they done transferred 500 people from Reedsville prison and moved them up toward North Georgia, because they need that to be counted as well. But there are people working on those issues. It just takes the support of people. And to be honest with you, like Teresa said, places of faith. These people could stand out. It's not just being in a pulpit talking about what Jesus said. It's talking about social justice issues. That's why you'll see on my shirt, it's in the Bible. That says you're supposed to do right, seek justice, and defend the oppressed. This is not something I make up. This is in the Bible. This is part of what you're supposed to do as a person of faith. You're supposed to stand up for social justice action. You're supposed to be getting up doing these kind of things. But that is something that's being worked on. But from the attorney side, I let Paige talk about it.
Well, just before you do that, I lived in Rhode Island. Rhode Island has one of the fastest reductions in incarceration. And how do they do it? People get to go to college in prison. People get paid for work they do in prison. See, prison industries across the country are big business. The fact that those small towns will let a private prison company come to their towns to build a prison so that those people can get counted, which is what Alicia was talking about. So that counting not only gets you money, but it also gets you representation based on the size of the growth of your district. So we have to understand that this is a political, economic, social issue where overwhelmingly the majority of people in prison are Black and brown. So we have to understand the new slavery. That 13th Amendment, which there's a flyer that Brother Johnny Warner, who is our community historian, he brought them by so that I could share them with you. The 13th Amendment says you're free unless you're convicted of a crime. That is the incentive for the state to rearrest you. And when slavery ended, every kind of effort was made to put Black people back in slavery based on the 13th Amendment saying, if you convict a crime, you're a slave again. So we have to understand mass incarceration for what it is. Paige, thank you.
I had just two things I wanted to mention. They're kind of tangential, but I do want to take a moment because special questions kind of prompted this. One just involves voting, because what we have learned through the different election seasons is that there's been some information surrounding that. So I just want to remind folks that the only time in which you are not able to vote in Georgia is if you are currently serving a felony sentence, if you have a felony first offender case or a conditional discharge case and your status has not been revoked, you can still vote. So it is only if you are currently serving a felony sentence. What does this really mean for exclusions, right? What if you are experiencing this and you can still vote? Meaning if you have a misdemeanor case, you can still vote. If you are incarcerated pre-trial before a case is resolved, even for a felony, right, hasn't been pled to or convicted, you can still vote. This is specific to Georgia, but it will affect both a local and a national election. So I do want to mention that, just reminding folks about their ability to vote. The other thing I'll mention too, and I think the question is that is the problem, right? You know, what about folks that are being released from incarceration? Like, what do you expect them to do, right? You give them nothing, but then you say make something. So the only thing it made me think of is just some of the things that we are currently doing at GJP, and just people need to keep having these conversations, come to the table, keep coming up with ideas to try to address it. But we have some things that we're doing on the front and kind of the back end of the system, I guess, so to speak. One is we're trying to divert the number of cases that actually result in a conviction. So we encourage you to look at our website and check out our restorative justice practices, things that actually divert folks, and also give a voice to victims in the process. The other thing is we are working at the Metro Reentry Facility. So it's one of the first transitional facilities of its kind in Atlanta. Yes, it is still a carceral facility, but what we are doing there is we're trying to work with folks so that they have as smooth as possible of a transition back into society, so that as returned citizens, they are treated as such. So through things like that, we are trying to they are connected with social workers. We've got social workers who go down there who try to connect them with employment or housing resources, or just remove those issues that just pop up, right? Someone might have a missed court date somewhere and have a hold placed on them. Well, how is someone going to start back their life if they are ready to be released and they get shipped off to some other county in Georgia? So I think it just really takes taking a holistic look at a person, because that is what we are, right? And it just takes these conversations to keep coming up with more ideas to do things like that. Oh, yeah.
Sir?
Oh, I guess my question is, I had spoken with Reverend Flakes earlier. It goes to what Ms. Page was saying about voting. I'm a bit confused. If you're a citizen, is voting is a right in this country, as far as I understand, and driving is a privilege. So my question is, if you're incarcerated, how do you lose your right to vote if you're a citizen of this country? Where's the law that says that? If you're a citizen born in the United States, you have a voting right. You can't take away somebody's citizenship because they're incarcerated. They're still a citizen of this country.
And you're,
So where's the law that identifies that?
I don't know the law, the case law off the top of my head, but I know once you go into the prison complex, you become a ward of the state. You are still ward of that state until you are off paper. So until you are finished with your parole or probation, you still are a ward of the state. So, and you lose, when you become a ward of the state, you lose those privileges or that right to voting, because now Big Daddy is watching you, or is now governing over your life. So until that governorship of your sentence is over, that is why we're not allowed to vote. It's unfair. It's just what it is.
The reason I say that
I
is
don't
because
know
I'm
the law.
surprised that ACLU hasn't challenged that in court, that it's illegal to take away somebody's citizenship if they're born in this country. Even if you're locked up, you still should have the right to vote. It's not a privilege,
Well,
it's a right.
let me explain this. Rights are given by certain institutions and governments, and states control voting rights. So when you have voter suppression laws passed all over the country, and now the majority of states, that's because states are allowed to do that. There is no federal control over what states say about who can vote, because in some states in this country, people who are in prison can actually vote. Yeah, and if you're in jail and you haven't been convicted of a crime, which is what happens in Columbus a lot, you could be sitting in jail waiting to be indicted for a year or two.
Right.
Do you lose your right to vote? Well, there are people who are challenging that. If you haven't been indicted and you're just in jail, why can't you send in an absentee ballot and vote? So those laws of who can vote are being challenged. And that's part of what the Multi-Faith Initiative for Ending Mass Incarceration has to have as a part of the movement. Everybody should have the right to vote. In some states, you lose your right forever if you've been convicted of a felony. That's why all that craziness was going on in Florida, talking about people breaking the law by voting because they had had a felony. So it's different from state to state, my brother. And when the state legislature opens in Georgia in January, we got to be there to make sure that the voting rights are expanded. We got to undo what has been done in suppressing the vote. So it's different state to state.
And for those of you who do not know, you can go to prison for another 10 years for registering to vote when you should not.
No, not registering, by voting.
No.
I physically go, I am
Yeah.
registered to vote.
Yeah.
They won't send me to jail, but if I go to vote, and
That's,
they find
you
out,
can be guilty up
then
to
I
10
go,
years.
then I get another 10 years.
But I had a question, but my question is for Paige. I had a lady while we were eating, she asked the question, but she's gone now. The question is, when you have your record, you said there was twofold, that at one point of it, it still seemed out of course or something, but then you said something about something being sealed. So the question is, when you have your record sealed and an employer may pull it, do they get a flag that that record was sealed? Because sometimes when you get something saying it was sealed, now the next thing is it's triggering them to say, I wonder why it was sealed. So do they get something simply saying this person doesn't have a record, or does the employer get something indicating it was something there but it's been sealed?
Great question. So, they will not be told it is sealed, right? So this is for most employers. If they are pulling a private background check and they, type in identifying information for the applicant, it should return no record. Sometimes, because these are big companies, they don't do the best job of updating their records. Sometimes a sealed record will be reported, but that is a mistake. And if it is, then that company should be told it's this is something that's been sealed and it should be removed. So yeah, for most employers and housing providers, if it's been sealed, it just doesn't show up. And then, taking one step back, right, the restriction being that first part of the process. If you get something restricted, if the employer asks for a copy of your GCIC report, the kind of the report that they would get would actually show either no record if that was the only thing that was on there, or it would actually omit the entire case from that GCIC. It's usually referred to as a cycle, but it will be omitted if it has been restricted. So the good news is that, that information goes away. In Georgia, and this is just, I feel like part of this conversation is where's the room for improvement, because there is a little bit in this area. Even though records in Georgia have been restricted and sealed, it doesn't make the case go away. And by that, what I mean, in terms of reporting, and by that, what I mean is some states allow records that have been expunged, they allow the individual to deny that it ever happened. Our law does not say that or allow for that. So what it means is, if we're able to assist with expunging or restricting and sealing a misdemeanor conviction, the employer or housing provider likely won't see it if it's been done properly. But if an employer does say, have you ever been arrested before? Or have you been convicted before? The truthful answer under our law is yes still. So
That you've been arrested but not convicted.
you'd have to still report yes to conviction. I can repeat the question.
Even if it shows that you don't have a record?
Tell me what you think.
Give the mic to Suzanne.
My understanding, I think I've been telling people,
Suzanne, please
Yes.
introduce yourself.
I'm Suzanne Goddard, Solicitor's Office. If somebody comes in and, I lost my train of thought now. They always ask, if they're applying for a job and they've had their record restricted. And I said, you don't have a conviction. Now, these are just dismissed cases, I said, you can honestly say you are not convicted, but if they ask if you've been arrested, you have been arrested. And I've found that if you say you weren't, they're gonna find it, and then you've lied and they're not gonna hire you. And one other thing I want to add is about the First Offender Act. FOA pops up anyway, doesn't it?
On a GCIC?
Yeah.
Say what FLA is.
First Offender Act.
Oh, okay.
Does that pop up on, I see it, but I can see everything. I was just wondering if an employer could.
If it says first offender sealed, meaning it has been completed, it really means that it's been restricted on GCIC and it should not show up on a purpose code E, which is what an employer would use. You'd have to seal it, meaning get a court order to seal it so that it doesn't get reported by a private company. Did you want to ask?
Nick Hudd, DA's office. And part of the issue going to first offender is sometimes the judge doesn't put in the order to restrict and seal when someone's sentenced under first offender. And sometimes probation or a judge doesn't follow up and make sure that that order is put in at the end of the process. So ideally, someone wouldn't show up as under first offender or successfully completing it, but sometimes there are issues in the process, and that's why I'm glad that there are nonprofit attorneys who are bringing these issues to our attention so that we can go ahead and correct those issues.
My question is on that, because I'm confused now. because as someone who was sentenced under first offender for 5 years, I was told that if I got out June of 2011, and I'm supposed to be on first offender to 2017, 2018, meaning if I stay out of trouble for 5 years, after those 5 years, they will seal my record. Okay, the problem is, and it hasn't been said, that when you're under first offender, your record still shows to employers and to housing. To me, that ain't first offender. There's nothing about that that says you haven't been convicted. Because as a first offender person, when I was out looking for jobs in housing, I was being denied. And I'm like, well, I'm on the first offender. What's the purpose of the first offender? It wasn't until somebody said, oh, it's going to be on there for 5 years. So my question is, what is the process to make first offender a true first offender? That if you go to before the judge to be sentenced as first offender, we're going to lock you. We're going to lock your record right now. However, if you go out here and you get in some trouble again and violate, then we will unlock it where to be shown. But what is the purpose of it being a first offender if you've got to go 1 year, 5 years, 10 years of being denied the same thing that people who have been convicted getting just to wait after those 5 years? Because right now it does show.
I was gonna say that, especially a misdemeanor.
Hold on a second. By the way, this is being live streamed on Facebook to 2 groups, representing, over 2,500 people.
Okay.
So thank you.
What I was gonna say, in my court, state court with misdemeanors, usually you're gonna have a 12-month, your first offender, and you do 12 months without getting any trouble. But the problem is, people don't realize that they have to then have it discharged, which is another piece of paper to be filed. It doesn't happen automatically. If you think your lawyer or somebody's gonna do it automatically, they are not. I go through there and discharge a lot of them just because I have the paperwork to do it. So it does have to be discharged. And but my question at first was, when somebody sees it comes up FOA, people can't use it against you. You don't have a conviction. But when they see it in their head, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's why I was saying a true first offender, that when you sentence the first offender, your record can see it right then.
Add one thing, but did you want to?
No, that's what I was saying, because once an employer see that,
You
you
can't send it
can't,
back.
there's no need to explain it, that, well, sir, I haven't been convicted, I'm on the first offender. They've already
Yeah.
seen it.
Absolutely. So you're exactly right. On a GCIC, it would say first offender act deferred. It's not a conviction, which is it's important to say, but does it resolve everything? Probably not if they see it, right? But there is something that can be done under first offender when someone enters a plea, and that is the attorney or the individual can ask for sealing at the time of the plea. We ask, is that what you're gonna say? We ask every single, and when we do CLEs and train attorneys, we say you need to ask at the plea so that it doesn't show up for private background checks. Doesn't solve the GCIC issue, but employers are doing private reports. So that is the only way to take it out of those reporting companies' view while you're duration of a sentence before it ends up getting discharged or you're fully exonerated from the first offender
So
case.
what can be done where you have to not ask? As a defendant, I didn't know it. Apparently, my public defender didn't do it. So why do we have to ask?
Right.
It should be common sense that if a person is getting first
I agree.
offender, it should be automatically sealed.
Sure.
And we want to make sure that we give it to Pastor Place, because we do have after Mr. Hood, because we do need to stop at 2.
And to your question, at this point, it's discretionary if the judge seals it on taking the first offender plea. So if there was a law passed that said when a first offender is entered, then it was not discretionary, it had to be sealed at that point. That is something that could be legally changed to prevent some of these issues going forward.
Okay, right now you to do that right now.
You got it.
Thanks so very much. I think you just answered the question. But I think number 2 is that words are very important, as we all know. Words do not define themselves. There has to be a context to it. So when we use expunge and when we use restrict and seal, so even though we are saying, and I'm hearing it, if I'm interpreting it or hearing it wrong, Expunge simply means destroy, or that record has been absolutely, is gone. Is that what I'm hearing as an operating definition?
Usually
As
that's what
simply
that
as a-
refers to, right, and it's not our current record clearing law.
Right. So when we're using the terminology restricted seal, because when we are talking to the public, we're talking expunge, right? That's the common terminology. So that sets expectations that, so I guess the question that I'm asking, how, and you're using it today, I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah.
but there, it seems though they're synonymous in the minds of so many, in my mind, they're interchangeable. So is there a campaign to educate, you know, the public about, you know, is there an intentional, you know, campaign to really change the wording or change the definition so that persons who are looking for expungement, they're not looking for expungement per se, they're looking to restrict and seal. Is that an accurate perception for us to?
Can I?
Sorry.
Hi, thank you. So that is one of the questions that the committees with multi-faith have been talking about, especially in that policy and education piece. So yes, we are looking to educate, you know, the public about what the right definitions are so that the expectations are there based on how the law works in Georgia.
Well, if you could pass it to Paige, because when we had our meeting the other day, planning for today's event, there was a talk about pardons and how that, and I'm a little concerned about this. Like at the police department, I knew I would not be applying for a job, and just getting my records expunged is good enough for me. But what is this pardons thing that you were suggesting that people might have to do? How does that relate to the whole restrict, seal, expunge?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about pardons. So, especially because now they're so much more powerful in Georgia than they once were. So, whenever anyone has a felony conviction or more than one felony conviction on their record, and something like first offender is not an option, meaning they've either used it, it's been revoked, or they don't qualify, and that's something that's a little more specific. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone more one-on-one about what that would look like. But if that's not an option, and we're looking at a pardon. A general pardon is something that is submitted through the State Board of Pardon and Parole. It is a separate entity, so it doesn't go through the court process. It is an application that is submitted. It is relief that can do a few things, and they're different types. When we are talking about a general pardon, we're talking about the type of relief that is the state of Georgia saying, upon submitting an application, you have been officially forgiven of this offense. So the board also has other kinds of relief like restoration of firearm rights and things like that, but we really focus in on general pardons because for a felony conviction, that is the remaining option. They're even more powerful now, which is great because before if you got a pardon, you'd have that certificate. But now it's getting better.
Yeah.
Okay. Before, yes. So before the change in the law, if you got the pardon, your GCIC, your criminal history would show that you got the pardon. There would be an entry put on your record. There are some liability protections for employers. So if you were going through the hiring process and you showed the individual that was doing the hiring decision making that you got the pardon, there were some protections there. But to Alicia's point, you can still see it, right? So when folks come to us, they're like, that's great, but what can come off my record? So thankfully, we were talking before about the expansion of the law, about how now 2 misdemeanors can come off someone's record. Pardon offenses are now eligible to be restricted and sealed. So if you have a general pardon, and it is for an offense that is eligible, there are exclusions. Typically, they're more serious offenses, but we've got the screening material back there. But if you've gotten a pardon for it and have not had a conviction since receiving the pardon, there's nothing pending, it's an eligible offense, you now can get into court, right? You now can restrict and seal that pardoned offense. So it really has opened the landscape for what can be done for a felony conviction. Still limited in Georgia, but it's a new option.
I do want to let everyone know this session is from 11 until 2. And I want to let everyone know the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, based here in Columbus, is the sponsor of the event. And we have with us Danita Gibson Lloyd, who's on the steering committee of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch here in Columbus. We have Etta Lamb, raise your hand, who's also on the steering committee of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. We have Shantae McLaughlin, who is here from Atlanta with the Metro Atlanta branch, and Walisha Wilson is also a member of the Metro Atlanta branch of Will. And we do want to thank Will for providing us with a $2,500 grant to have the food prepared for you. And there are quite a few boxes left because I asked the hospitality committee to plan for 60 people. So I'm glad that they boxed it because we do want you to take food with you if you would like when you leave. But the most important action announcement I'd like to make is the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom has an Advancing Human Rights Committee. And one of the subcommittees is ending mass incarceration and the death penalty, which is why it's so important that we're connecting with a multi-faith initiative for ending mass incarceration, because Will, sponsor of this event, will be meeting on Monday in our ending mass incarceration and the death penalty committee. And so this video is going to be used by people in Vermont, in California, in Iowa, and lots of other places as to what they can do in their states. So I just want to let you know, Paige and everyone, how important it is that you're here today, because this will be made available throughout the country for what we're trying to do in Georgia. And I do want to say that Carolyn Hughley, who is my state rep, and she's been in the Georgia State House since 1993, she has promised me that she will have a meeting with us before they go into session in January, because there are some state laws that we need to take a look at related to mass incarceration. And I do want to give Pastor Flakes a chance to make some closing remarks and to pray us out of here, because before he does that, is there anything else burning? Because those of us who are getting our records expunged, thanks to Pastor Flakes, he set up some rooms where we can stay and get that done. So could people who have given their records for expungement, raise your hands. How many of us are there here?
6.
Okay, great. Well, we are the ones who will be remaining for our free legal assistance.
Right?
Free legal assistance. Yes, Felicia.
I just had 2 announcements. I am the chapter coordinator for All of Us or None chapter here in Atlanta. Anybody can join it from Georgia. One of the things that we will be working on, we haven't actually announced it officially, but the press release will be going out in January, is that we're going to be joining the 4 states who did vote to end slavery in their state. That is what we're planning on doing here in Georgia to end prison slave labor. And that video, Teresa's already seen it, but Muskogee County is mentioned in the video, as well as Clayton County. And so when you start hearing about ending slavery, and people say slavery is illegal, that's what we're talking about, prison slave labor. And so I'll make sure that Teresa's going to get that announcement, and we'll make sure that Reverend Flakes and his church and everybody gets the announcements that that's what we're planning on doing. So we hope we will have you all support, because we know it's going to be a long journey and a long battle, but if the people of the state of Georgia stood up and said we're not going to tolerate slavery anymore, it can definitely pass. And if Alabama people, Alabama got it done.
When I saw that, I said, hallelujah.
Yes, and I'm sure that prison strike had a little something to do with that too. And the second announcement I want to make is I sit on the board of directors for an organization called Restore Georgia. And even though it may not qualify to any of you in here, what we do at Restore Georgia is we advocate for people on the sex offender registry. However, we will be hosting an event with our partners. GJP will be there on January 10th. You don't have to be on the registry to attend. It is a virtual event. It's free. And last year, GJP worked on passing a law, SB 105, that does work with people when you have probation. You can now request to have your probation terminated early if you meet certain qualifications. You definitely know you have to have already been on paper 3 years, and Paige can tell you a bit more about that. But I just want to let you know that is going to be a 1-hour event. January 10th is going to be virtually. I'll make sure I send the information out to Teresa, and she can make sure she sends it to folks on as you sign in on the list. But you can also, if you're on probation in the state of Georgia, if you've been on it for at least 3 years and meet other qualifications, you can request to be off probation early. And so I would like to invite you all to that as well.
Well, before you pass it, if you could say just a word about JRP and the lobby day coming up in March.
Oh, yes. Last year we had it here in Columbus. I don't know if a lot of you all remember me here, but here in Columbus, prior to moving from Columbus to Atlanta, my organization worked with Georgia Justice Project to get people on the bus. We were actually putting people on the bus going to Justice Day at the Capitol. And so I came down last year. We did an event at the Macon Road Library. And what we do every year with the Justice Reform Partnership, or JRP, is it is a network of organizations who are working throughout Georgia to end and change laws that relate to affect people who are currently informally incarcerated, including youth. And so every year around February, March, but this year it's going to be the first week in March, there's a one-day advocacy day where we ask you all to engage with your state legislators on issues that impact you. And a lot of the issues that we're focusing on, I think we have 3 areas that we're focusing on this year, which is going to be youth justice. One of the major issues is people are wanting to lower the age that people right now, you got to be 17 to go to jail. People want to lower that age to put you in adult prison. So we're fighting to raise the age to 18. Youth justice, prison conditions, and reentry, the barriers to reentry, being able to come back. And so these are things we're going to be engaging our legislators and saying, look, we have issues with it. These are problems we have. So we want you all to be looking out to that information. Of course, we'll make sure we send everything to Teresa as well as to Pastor Flake so they can make sure they distribute and share it out as well. But please get engaged with that, because when we have people making laws for us who are not impacted by it, they could care less what's being passed. So we need for us to be able to say, no, this is affecting our communities. People are coming home, they can't get jobs, they can't get housing, and this is causing problems. And then we're going to also be having an event called throughout the month of March, every Tuesday, Talk Justice Tuesdays. And on those Tuesdays, they're only going to be talking about youth justice. So if you have a passion where you're working with youth who are engaged with the criminal legal system, that will be something you also want to engage. And they're going to be virtual. Now, we're still working on whether Justice Day at the Capitol is going to actually be in person, or whether we're going to be taking up this task again for Walisha to come back to Columbus and do an in-person event. But if that is the case, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, please try to come. And if it is in Atlanta, we'll see what we can do to coordinate with trying to get transportation to the Capitol, because we do need Columbus voices in the room. And like Teresa said, it's one of the largest cities here in the state of Georgia.
Second largest city.
Second largest.
Second only to Atlanta.
Yeah, and about 500 people
Let's be
return.
clear.
A lot of people don't know, but about between 450 and 650 people who are released from Georgia prisons every year. They first, Atlanta gets the most, and you can imagine who gets the second, Columbus. So if Columbus is the second city that's getting the most amount of people that's returning home from prison, Columbus needs to be at every meeting when they're talking about ending mass incarceration or issues that impact people with criminal records. Because that's why the crime's so high. That's why the poverty rate's so high. That's why we have so many homeless people here in Columbus. All that stuff is intricate. So please get engaged.
Well, Paige, did you have a last word?
Just again to say thank you so much. We're happy to, GJP's happy to be part of this event and this conversation. It's incredibly important. We recognize that our current record clearing law is limited, and there are rooms for improvement. We every year go back to the Capitol to try to clean up prior bills that have been passed. We're trying to expand it as much as we can. But what we have found, this is kind of echoing what's already been said by this panel, but what we have found is that stories, what is happening to probably people in this room, that is what is most impactful. That is what really makes the case for expansion in our record clearing. So there are ways on our website to get engaged, to share your story, to help be a part of making that change. So I just would encourage you to do so, or just come talk to us. We'll show you how to get connected.
Well, I want to ask Nicole, because Nicole has promised me in her role as coordinator over Georgia for Multi-Faith Initiative for Ending Mass Incarceration, that she and I are going to work closely together. She's going to come here. So what would you like to say, Nicole? And then Pastor Blake said,
Yes, I am definitely looking forward to working with you, Ms. Alameen, and Pastor Flakes on making Columbus have a voice and to be heard. So I look forward to the many conversations, arrangements that we'll have together.
And we're coming out here to Station of Hope training too at some point.
We'll get there. We are, Pastor Flakes and I, we got that. Over
okay,
there.
Pastor Blake, your words and prayers out of here.
Thank you all so very much. I was just thinking that out of all that's being said, it's been wonderful, the information that's given. And we thank those who are in the live streaming audience. And hopefully that has been impactful as well. But I just want us to remember that we can change policies. We can change judicial system, reform judicial systems. We can change processes. But until we truly understand the depth of the saving, redemptive grace of God in Jesus Christ, I won't say it won't matter. It will. But in terms of true change, hearts has to be changed. Minds have to be changed. Lives have to be changed. And so a lot of people say, well, where's the church? It's where it's always been. It hasn't gone anywhere. So I want to say to all of those who are on the wall, because I know many churches that are engaged, it breaks my heart that any church will exclude anybody. That breaks my heart when I hear Ms. Alicia say that, there were 3 churches that she, and I hope ours weren't one.
It wasn't.
Say that again.
It wasn't.
Thank to God be the glory. I hope we're not on that list. That's a short list. But with all seriousness, the body of Christ is a hospital. It's where hurt people come, regardless of the trauma, regardless of what it hurt them. It is a place of liberation. It's a place of hope. And so I want to just say to, if pastors are out there, if anyone who's a part of a congregation, it's egregious for any pastor, for any congregation to exclude anyone. The Bible says he died for all of us while we were yet in our most unlovable state. And so with that, thank you, Sister Teresa. God bless you. Love you. All right. And thank you, Paige, and your staff, Alicia, and Ms. Nicole. It's an honor, and it's very humble. Suzanne, thank you. District Attorney HUD, thank you so very much. Assistant.
He's speaking stuff in existence.
District Attorney. No disrespect to my good friend, Stacey Jackson. So we know Stacey, so God bless you.
Don't want to give my boss the wrong idea.
We definitely do not want to do that as well. Dear gracious Father, we thank you for this time of gathering. We thank you for these who have come. We thank you for the information that have been shared, not only in terms of person to person, but also in the live streaming platform. We pray that it will make a difference. We pray that those who receive the information, that they will be able to not only just hear it, but will seek guidance and direction to apply it, that they too can have rights. They can have their privileges restored. And for those who are here now, we pray that they will be able to have their rights and privileges restored. Now we ask as we're dismissed from this place, dismiss us from this place, but never from your grace, never from your presence, your provision, nor your protection. It's in my faith tradition that I pray. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.